Ryan's office revenge.
The CEO's wife looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. Crystal glasses were clinking across the dining room at the plaza. Investors were talking quietly about quarterly projections and infrastructure yields. You know, that relaxed kind of conversation that happens when everyone thinks a deal is already locked up. Then Vivian Ashcroft turned toward her husband and spoke just loud enough for half the table to hear. "Daniel, why is the help mingling with investors?" She swirled the wine in her glass, never taking her eyes off me. I thought tonight was for serious money, not entertainment staff. The words hit that table like a dropped plate. Two managing directors stopped talking mid-sentence. A server carrying champagne actually froze. Someone near the back quietly lifted their phone to record what was happening. For about 10 seconds, nobody said anything. Then her son decided to jump in. "Who do you think you are?" Troy Ashcroft stepped closer, wearing that look rich kids get when they're used to making people disappear on command. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to earn respect in your life. He glanced toward the security guys by the entrance. Security can escort the staff back to the kitchen where they belong. A few people actually laughed. Most didn't. "Look, I should probably tell you who I am. My name is Marcus Bradley. I'm 48 years old, and I work as Senior Vice President of Risk Management for North Spire Capital." We were about to close a $350 million infrastructure deal that night, and I held one of the key regulatory sign-offs needed to release the escrow funds. I spent 8 years in the Navy before I got into finance. Started as an enlisted man, worked my way up to petty officer first class. Did 2 deployments in the Gulf, learned a thing or two about staying calm when people try to intimidate you. After I got out, I used my GI Bill to get a business degree and landed an entry-level job on Wall Street. That was 15 years ago. I've been climbing the ladder ever since, one deal at a time. Back at the table, Troy was still waiting for me to react. Vivian raised her glass again, clearly enjoying the show. "Oh, don't look so serious," she said with a little laugh. "It was just an observation. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was something else entirely, because about 30 seconds later, standing in the quiet hallway outside that dining room, I made one phone call that stopped their $350 million deal dead in its tracks. The real question is, did they understand what just happened? I walked away from the table before anyone noticed I was gone. The hallway outside the plaza's private dining floor was quiet compared to all the noise inside. You could still hear the string quartet playing, mixed with investors discussing risk assessments and portfolio allocations. I pulled out my phone and called a number I only use when something has gone seriously wrong. Dominion Escrow Services, Regulatory Division. These guys handle the money side of major deals. When they say stop, everything stops. Escrow operations, this is Daniel Mercer. "This is Marcus Bradley," I said, keeping my voice level. "Risk Authorization Officer for the Ashcroft Infrastructure Expansion. I need to initiate an administrative hold under the reputational governance provision." There was a pause. "These clauses exist for situations when executive behavior creates legal or compliance risk around a transaction. They're buried deep in the paperwork, but every major deal has one. Most people never think about them until they need them." "Mr. Bradley," Mercer said carefully, "are you certain you want to activate that provision?" "Absolutely certain. I'm filing a reputational incident report under Section 14.2. Documentation will follow within the hour." Another pause. "Longer this time? Understood. A provisional 72-hour administrative hold can be implemented pending legal review." "That'll work." I could hear typing on his end. "Automatic notification will be sent to the transaction legal teams, executive signatories, and registered board observers." "Correct." More typing. Then he said quietly, "The hold is now active, Mr. Bradley." I hung up. For a moment, I just stood there in that hallway listening to the distant sound of investors who had no idea their $350 million deal had just hit a brick wall. You have to understand something about these escrow holds. They're not suggestions. When Dominion locks down the money, it stays locked until every single legal requirement gets satisfied. No exceptions, no shortcuts. No family connections that can make the problem disappear. Back inside the dining room, Daniel Ashcroft's phone buzzed. He looked down at the screen and I could see his expression change from across the room. The subject line read, "Escrow release suspended. Immediate review required." When I walked back into the room, the whole atmosphere had shifted. You know how it is with financial people. They can sense when money stops moving before anyone else even notices. The music was still playing. Glasses were still moving between hands, but conversations had slowed down and several people were checking their phones. At the center of it all, Daniel Ashcroft stood next to the investor table, staring at his screen like he was trying to decode a foreign language. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Next to him, Samuel Torres, the company's general counsel. glanced at the email Daniel showed him. Torres was one of those lawyers who had spent 20 years learning how to sound calm when everything was falling apart around him. Probably procedural, Torres said, but his voice had that careful tone lawyers use when they're not sure about anything. Escrow systems sometimes trigger temporary holds when new documentation gets filed. Daniel didn't look convinced. Around them, several investors had received the same notification through their own legal teams. Robert Sterling, a managing director from Houseman Capital, leaned forward. "Daniel," he said carefully, "why is escrow frozen?" Across the table, another investor was scrolling through his phone. "I'm seeing the same notice." Daniel took a slow breath. You could see him trying to figure out how to explain something he didn't understand himself. "We're looking into it. It's probably nothing serious." Behind them, Vivian Ashcroft was still holding her wine with the same smug expression she'd had all evening. She let out a dismissive laugh. "This is ridiculous. You're all acting like the deal just collapsed." Her son Troy wasn't laughing. He was staring across the room with obvious irritation. "Someone screwed up," he said. "Just fix it." But here's the thing about financial markets. Uncertainty spreads like wildfire. The tension was moving through that dining room in waves. Investors were whispering to their assistants. Phones were appearing on tables. Legal advisors were quietly moving closer to their clients. I walked back to where I'd been standing and set my glass down exactly where I'd left it. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Across the room, Daniel was still studying that message on his phone, trying to figure out how a deal that was supposed to be locked up had suddenly stopped moving. Then one of the investors looked up from his screen, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. "Daniel," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "there's a simpler question here." He nodded toward me, who authorized the hold. The room went dead quiet. Every eye in that place locked onto me. I didn't move, didn't flinch. Then I answered. The risk authorization officer, a pause. You could have heard a pin drop. That would be me. For several seconds, nobody spoke. It was one of those moments when you realize something that seemed procedural just became very serious, very personal. Daniel Ashcroft looked at me from across the dining room. I watched confusion slowly turn into concern on his face. "You authorized the hold?" His voice wasn't hostile yet, more like careful. I nodded once. "That's right." Several investors exchanged looks. Vivian let out a short laugh. "Oh, for God's sake," she said, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "You cannot be serious. This entire evening is turning into a circus." Troy stepped forward next to his mother. "You froze a $350 million escrow because of what, exactly?" he demanded. The kid was getting worked up now. You could see it in his face. I kept my voice steady because of the reputational governance clause tied to the transaction. Torres, the lawyer, looked up from his tablet. Daniel frowned. "That clause is for executive misconduct, correct?" I replied. "It also applies to disclosed governance affiliates listed in the transaction filings." Several people at the investor table started opening their phones again. This was news to them. Vivian scoffed. "I'm not part of the company's governance." I met her eyes directly. "Actually, you are." A ripple of uncertainty moved through the room like a wave. "In the disclosure documents we filed with Dominion Trust," I continued, "you're listed as a governance affiliate of the CEO. That places your conduct within the reputational scope of the deal." Torres was already pulling up the transaction agreement on his tablet. He started scrolling through it, page after page. The room got quieter as he read. Across the dining room, investors watched him with that focused patience that comes from spending your career waiting for lawyers to finish reading contracts. Then Torres's finger stopped moving. He leaned closer to the screen. "Section 14.2, he said quietly. The clause was short, maybe 3 sentences. But what it meant wasn't short at all. For several seconds, he didn't say anything. The dining room was completely still. Finally, Torres lifted his head and looked directly at Daniel. His voice dropped to just above a whisper. "He's right." The silence that followed was different from before, not the kind that comes after someone makes a speech, the kind that settles when people start quietly recalculating their risk exposure. Daniel ran a hand across his face, clearly trying to understand how a social comment had suddenly become a legal issue tied to a $350 million transaction. But before he could say anything, Troy stepped forward. His voice cut through the room like a knife. "This is extortion." Several heads turned immediately. Troy's expression had hardened into the kind of anger that comes from someone who's rarely been told no in his entire life. "You embarrass my mother in public," he said, pointing right at me, and suddenly the escrow gets frozen. "That's not how corporate governance works." "I'm not threatening anyone," I replied calmly. "The hell you're not," Troy snapped. Several investors had stopped pretending to check their phones. They were watching this play out now, and everyone knew it. "If you think you can blackmail our company because someone hurt your feelings," he continued, his voice getting louder. "You're going to regret it." He took another step closer. "And if you believe you're important enough to stop this deal, I can make one phone call tomorrow and make sure you never work in finance again." Those words settled into the room like a lead weight. Across the table, Torres closed his tablet slowly, like he was deciding whether to jump in and stop this. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside him. "Troy," Daniel said quietly, "this isn't helping anything." But the damage was already spreading through that room like spilled wine. Near the end of the table, Theodore Morrison sat with the calm stillness of someone who had watched too many deals collapse over smaller mistakes than this one. Morrison represented Houseman Capital's investment committee. More importantly, he chaired the oversight board for the expansion deal. He was one of those guys who could make or break your company with a single phone call. He hadn't spoken once during this entire mess. He just watched. Every now and then, he'd write a few notes in a slim leather notebook that sat beside his wine glass. Observing, recording, evaluating. Everyone in that room understood exactly what that meant. When people like Theodore Morrison start taking notes, decisions are already being made somewhere behind the scenes. Across the investor table, one of the senior partners leaned toward his colleague and spoke quietly. "Not quietly enough." "Daniel," he murmured, glancing toward Troy, "is this how your company operates?" That question hung in the air like smoke. Because if the answer was yes, everyone at that table knew what it meant for the deal. The dining room never got back to the relaxed atmosphere it had earlier. Conversations continued, sure, but they were quieter now, more cautious. Investors had shifted from casual discussion to careful evaluation mode. At the far end of the table, Morrison closed his notebook. He didn't raise his voice or call attention to himself. Instead, he opened his tablet and began typing. Within seconds, a secure file was moving through the internal distribution system that Houseman Capital's investment committee used for sensitive communications. Recipients included board observers, lead legal advisors, transaction oversight officers, and compliance specialists, including me. My phone buzzed quietly in my hand. A document had arrived. Ashcroft Infrastructure Governance Risk Review. I opened it while the conversation continued around me. Inside were several brief summaries pulled from internal governance filings and previous investor risk assessments. Two of them immediately caught my attention. Both involved incidents connected to Vivian Ashcroft. They had occurred during investor-related events and had quietly appeared in previous governance reviews. The first one described an incident during a charity auction 18 months earlier. A junior staff member had filed a formal complaint after being publicly humiliated in front of major donors. The case had been resolved privately through an HR settlement and a non-disclosure agreement. The second incident had occurred at an investor reception the previous year. According to the report, Vivian had confronted a visiting partner over seating arrangements and demanded that security remove him from a VIP area. Again, the situation had been contained quietly through back-channel negotiations. No public consequences either time, but seeing these reports side by side made something uncomfortably clear. This wasn't a single moment of poor judgment. It was a pattern of behavior. Across the room, Vivian still looked more annoyed than worried. She had no idea this information was now circulating among the very people who controlled the investment dollars that kept her family's company running. I looked up from my phone. Morrison had risen from his chair and was speaking quietly with one of the senior investors. Daniel was watching them with obvious concern, probably wondering what they were discussing. After a moment, Morrison turned toward the table. His voice remained calm, but the words carried weight that everyone could feel. "This wasn't the first incident, was it?" That question hung in the air like a challenge. Nobody answered right away. The first calls began less than 10 minutes after Morrison's file started circulating. They didn't come from journalists or financial analysts. They came from limited partners. Across the dining room, several Houseman Capital associates had stepped away from the tables and moved to quieter areas, speaking in low voices into their phones. Their tone had that calm restraint you hear right before serious financial decisions get made. I watched Morrison as he listened to one call, nodding slowly. On the other end of that line were the institutions that had supplied most of the capital behind the $350 million expansion. Pension funds, endowments, sovereign wealth funds, the kind of people who rarely move quickly unless governance risk appears on their radar. One of the analysts standing near Morrison spoke quietly after finishing his call. "They're asking about governance stability." Another one added, "and whether family members are influencing operational decisions." That question alone was enough to make several people at the investor table shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Because if the answer was yes, the implications were pretty obvious. Governance risk meant pricing risk. If the deal moved forward under a cloud of uncertainty, the investment committee would have to adjust their financial models. Risk premiums would go up. Debt terms would get tighter. The expansion that had looked comfortable funded an hour earlier could suddenly become a lot more expensive. Daniel had started pacing near the table now, speaking urgently with Torres. I could catch fragments of their conversation. "This is just a misunderstanding," Daniel kept saying. "We can resolve this. The issue isn't the misunderstanding," Torres replied quietly. "It's the documentation trail that's already been created." Meanwhile, Morrison's investment team had gathered at a nearby table, laptops open, phones on speaker. They weren't discussing the evening's dinner anymore. They were conducting an emergency committee review right there in the dining room. Morrison ended another call and looked down at his notes. Then he spoke quietly into his phone again. On the other end, one of the limited partners responded clearly enough for several people nearby to hear. "We're reviewing the entire situation," the voice said. There was a pause. Then, more carefully, "We may have backed the wrong leadership structure." Those words hit the room like a punch to the gut. Because when institutional investors start questioning leadership structure, deals don't just get delayed, they get restructured or they disappear entirely. The emergency board meeting began about 90 minutes later. It wasn't scheduled or announced ahead of time, but within an hour, the senior leadership of Ashcroft Infrastructure had gathered in a conference room 3 blocks away from the plaza. Meanwhile, investors remained at the hotel, continuing their increasingly cautious conversations. A large screen at the end of the conference table flickered to life. Victoria Whitfield appeared on the video call. She chaired the board's governance committee and had been one of the earliest investors in the company. People rarely heard her raise her voice. They didn't need to. Her influence carried through rooms the moment she spoke. "I've reviewed the initial incident report," Whitfield said evenly. "Before we discuss the escrow hold, I want one simple question answered." Her eyes settled on Daniel through the camera, who actually runs this company. Nobody answered right away. The question seemed simple enough, but everyone in that room knew it wasn't. Daniel shifted slightly in his chair, clearly choosing his words carefully. "I do," he said finally. Whitfield didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her attention to Torres. "Legal. What does the documentation show?" Torres slid a thick document across the table toward Daniel. "The audit trail from the past 12 months shows multiple instances where operational decisions were modified after direct input from family members who hold no executive positions." The language was careful and professional, but the meaning was crystal clear to everyone in that room. Across the table, Morrison added quietly, "Our internal review reached the same conclusion." He opened a folder and placed several pages beside Torres's report. Several operational approvals were altered following external pressure from non-executive family members. Whitfield studied the documents in silence through the video connection. Daniel leaned forward, trying to regain some control of the situation. "These were informal family discussions," he said quickly. "Nothing that affected our core governance structure." Morrison met his eyes directly. "Our financial analysis suggests otherwise." The room grew very still. Outside the conference room windows, you could see the lights of Manhattan reflecting off the East River in the distance. Finally, Whitfield closed the file she'd been reading. Her voice remained quiet, but the authority behind it was unmistakable to everyone present. "That ends today." The room stayed quiet after Whitfield spoke. Nobody rushed to fill the silence. On the screen, board members who were connected remotely were reading through the same documents that were now spread across the conference table in hard copies. Daniel finally looked in my direction. "What would it take to resolve the hold?" he asked. The question was measured and professional, but you could hear the strain underneath it. Torres shifted in his chair, probably preparing to explain the legal and procedural steps that would be involved, but I answered first, before he could start talking. "I'm not asking for money," I said. Several heads turned toward me. That had clearly been their assumption. When large deals stall out, the usual reason is negotiation. Someone wants a bigger fee, a different contract structure, better terms for their side. But that wasn't what this was about. "This isn't about compensation or financial adjustments," I continued. "It's about governance risk and investor protection." I let those words settle for a moment before continuing. "If this transaction is going to move forward, the investors need confidence that this company is being run by qualified professionals." Across the table, Daniel's expression tightened noticeably. "What does that mean in practical terms?" I looked around the room before answering. 3 specific conditions." The room grew completely still. You could have heard someone breathing. "First," I said, "the CEO position must transition to independent leadership within 30 days. Daniel didn't react immediately, but the implication was unmistakable to everyone present. "Second," I continued, "Vivian Ashcroft must be formally removed from all governance disclosures and permanently barred from attending any company events that involve investors or financial partners." Vivian, who had insisted on attending this meeting, stiffened in her chair. "You're holding up hundreds of millions of dollars because of a dinner conversation," she said, her voice sharp with indignation. I looked at her for a long moment before responding. "No, ma'am." A pause. "I'm holding it up because of a documented pattern of behavior that creates liability risk for pension fund investors." The room went quiet again. The phrase pension fund investors had weight in that room. These weren't just rich people's investment accounts we were talking about. These were retirement funds for teachers, firefighters, construction workers, regular Americans who trusted their money to institutions like ours. And third, I finished turning back to Daniel. Troy Ashcroft must have zero operational involvement with this company going forward. No advisory role, no access to internal meetings, no influence on business decisions whatsoever. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Across the table, Morrison sat quietly, watching the board members on the screen process what they just heard. Daniel leaned back slowly in his chair. "That's not a negotiation," he said finally. "No, sir," I replied. "It's a governance correction." Whitfield studied the room from the video screen. Her eyes moved from Daniel to Vivian, then to the pile of documents on the table. Finally, she folded her hands together and spoke with quiet authority. "Very well." She looked around at the faces in the room and on the screen. Then she said one word. Vote. 2 weeks later, the business headlines were written in that careful language corporate reporters use when something embarrassing happens to a powerful company. Leadership transition announced at Ashcroft Infrastructure. Inside the financial industry, everyone understood exactly what that meant. Daniel Ashcroft had stepped down as CEO. The board's press release called it a governance restructuring designed to restore investor confidence and strengthen operational independence. In practical terms, it meant the company was now being run by an interim executive appointed by the board while they conducted a national search for permanent leadership. The other changes followed quickly after that. A formal governance resolution removed Vivian Ashcroft from all corporate disclosures related to investor relations. The document also prohibited her from attending any company-sponsored events involving financial partners or institutional investors. The announcement didn't mention the civil lawsuit that had been filed, but within legal circles, the complaint was already making the rounds. It accused her of defamation and reputational harm connected to the incident at the plaza. Meanwhile, the board issued a comprehensive new policy that people inside the company started calling the family governance prohibition. No relatives of executives could participate in corporate functions involving investors, negotiations, or operational oversight, not even as guests at company events. As for Troy Ashcroft, the board's resolution was simple and final. He would have no operational role in the company. No advisory position, no consulting arrangement, no access to internal meetings or strategic planning sessions. Nothing. During the week following the board vote, Ashcroft Infrastructure's stock price dropped 11% as financial analysts publicly questioned the company's governance culture and family influence on business decisions. The $350 million expansion deal didn't disappear entirely, but it got completely restructured under the new leadership team. Additional governance safeguards were written directly into the revised agreement. Investors remained cautious, but eventually the institutional money began flowing again. The escrow hold was lifted exactly 72 hours after I had authorized it, once all the new governance documentation was filed and approved. Daniel Mercer from Dominion called me personally to confirm that the funds were released and the transaction could proceed under the new structure. 6 months later, I got promoted to Executive Vice President of Institutional Risk Management. My new role involved overseeing compliance for deals involving pension funds and retirement investments, protecting working Americans' financial security from exactly the kind of governance failures we'd seen at Ashcroft. Late one afternoon, I walked out of our offices in Lower Manhattan and stepped onto the sidewalk. The city moved around me the way it always does. Yellow cabs weaving through traffic, people hurrying toward subway entrances, the distant sound of construction work echoing between the buildings. Behind me, the financial district continued its daily business of moving money, managing risk, and making deals that would affect millions of ordinary Americans' retirement security. I paused for a moment before heading home because the truth of what had happened was straightforward enough. The deal hadn't nearly collapsed because of a single insulting comment at a fancy dinner. It had come apart because entitled arrogance had been quietly running that company for years, creating real financial risk for institutional investors. Success often convinces people that rules are suggestions and accountability is for other folks. But eventually, if you're lucky, systems have a way of correcting themselves. The Ashcroft family learned that respect isn't inherited like stock options or trust fund accounts. It's earned through competence, integrity, and understanding that in American business, nobody gets to operate above the rules that protect working people's money. Those aren't just nice ideas you hear in corporate training seminars. When push comes to shove, they're the only principles that actually matter. Here's what I want you to understand. Every single day, people in positions of authority make choices that affect your financial security. Your pension, your 401k, your retirement savings, they're all connected to decisions made by executives you'll never meet, in boardrooms you'll never see. Most of these people do their jobs with integrity and professionalism, but some don't. When entitled behavior threatens the system that protects your money, somebody has to step up and use whatever authority they have to fix it. Whether you're a compliance officer, a board member, a fellow executive, or just an informed investor, you have more power than you realize to demand accountability from the people handling your financial future. The system only works when good people refuse to stay silent. Don't wait for someone else to speak up when you see governance failures that put working Americans at risk. Your retirement security depends on it.